This webinar is held and conducted as the commemoration for the 50 years of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Indonesia and the Republic of Korea. And as both countries has common interests in promoting sustainable development. And then, so we would like to use this webinar as an opportunity to advance this partnership towards realizing sustainable energy transition in the region of Asia. And before we start today's webinar, I would also like to deliver some of the housekeeping rules for today's agenda. So the first is that the main language for this webinar is in English, and there will be interpretation to Korea that is available if you click on the globe logo on the bottom right of your screen. And then if you want to ask questions during the presentation session, please use the raise hand feature or wait until the moderator open the Q&A rounds. And without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Fabi Tumiwa, the Executive Director of Institute for Essential Services Reform, to deliver the opening remarks for today's webinar. So Mr. Fabi Tumiwa, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Siha, and good morning to all of you. Welcome to all distinguished speakers, panelists, and participants to the webinar of Indonesia and South Korea Golden Jubilee, Advancing Bilateral Cooperation to Green Energy Partnership Towards Sustainable Energy Transition. Distinguished speakers, Her Excellency Yoon Jenny Kim, Ambassador and Deputy Minister for Climate Change, Republic of Korea, His Excellency Gigi Udi Utomo, Director for Energy Conservation, Director General for New and Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency National Assembly Member Seong Hwan Kim, and all distinguished panelists, Mr. Park Jang-hee from Korea Trade Insurance Corporation, Mr. Cahyo Purnomo, Deputy for Investment Investment Promotion, Ministry of Investment, Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Yoon Chung, a Special Advisor from Solution for Our Climate, and Mr. Yunan Fajar Arifianto from Indonesia Battery Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this webinar and your participation to this event. First of all, on behalf of ISR, let me offer our condolences to our South Korean friends for the recent disaster of the devastating heavy flood and landslide that caused life displacement of thousands of people and economic loss. Our deep sympathy to all victims. And this is, with this calamity, it reminds us that climate change is very serious and we need to take action to avoid larger, bigger climate crisis in our generations. ISR, or Institute for Essential Services Reform, is an energy and climate policy think tank based in Jakarta. Today's event is a part of ISR Energy and Climate Diplomacy Program, as we believe that the world climate has closely reached at the tipping point. Therefore, all major emitters, particularly G20 countries, must increase their ambition and make effort to contribute of cutting 50% of global emission by 2030 as needed to align with 1.5 degree limit as suggested by Paris Agreement. And through this partnership, G20 countries could do so. We believe that we need greater stakeholder engagement and regional cooperation with various global actors, including diplomatic representatives and international institutions. The webinar today is a collaboration between the Institute for Essential Services Reform and our friend from South Korea, Solution for Our Climate, in the momentum of Indonesia-South Korea Jubilee. And through this webinar, we aim to foster bilateral cooperation in accelerating the energy transition and climate ambition of both countries through a scaling up clean energy infrastructure projects and cooperation in energy transition. We also would like to explore the opportunity between Indonesia and South Korea key business stakeholders to increase the number of investment for both countries in energy-related sector, both on supply and demand side. Ladies and gentlemen, the cooperation between Indonesia and South Korea started in 1973, and since the establishment, the two countries have continued to increase and improve their relation beyond bilateral cooperation. Through regional and multilateral cooperation, and some partnership include ASEAN-Korea Free Trade Agreement. We also share the membership of largest economy in the world in the G20, and both countries are members of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in Asia Pacific. One of the meaningful cooperation for both countries is on economic aspect, including investment, finance, and trade. The trade volume between Indonesia and South Korea has increased significantly in the last 4 years. In 2021, the trade volume reached almost close to $20 billion compared to 1.4 billion in 2017. Also, in pursuit of sustainable development, the two countries have also signed Memorandum of Understanding on comprehensive cooperation in energy safety management. And this agreement becomes an opportunity for broader bilateral cooperation to develop clean energy generation through solar, hydrogen, and wind power. Furthermore, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement in 2023, we see it can advance energy cooperation to benefit all parties. The strong diplomatic relation between Indonesia and South Korea should direct to advance realization of green economy, attain sustainable development, and meet the Paris Agreement agenda to sustain all countries amid the climate crisis. At the same time, both countries have set their target to reduce emissions. Korea has set the target to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, as encompassed in the 2050 carbon neutral strategy of the Republic of Korea toward a sustainable and green society. And South Korea Green New Deal policy is directed to support investment and development of innovative climate technologies, and is willing, by example, to help the international community jointly put effort to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. It is strongly related to the industry and infrastructure development. On the other hand, Indonesia also has set target to reach net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. And recently we have set to increase our emission reduction at around 32% unconditionally and 43% conditionally by 2030, and stipulated in our enhanced NDC published last year. We also last year has signed agreement on just energy transition partnership with IPG in the mid of G20 summit. And this JETP has a target to reach emission peak in power sector by 290 million ton. and 34% of renewable energy mix by 2030 and net zero emission of the power sector by 2050. And from current analysis from ISR, our analysis indicates that meeting JETP target requires a retirement of coal plants before 2030 and gradually phase out to 2050. And this is also aligned with the presidential regulation that issued last year that has set the coal phase out by 2050. In order to meet the net zero emission, ISR estimated that Indonesia needs around 20 to 25 billion US dollar investment from now until 2025, from today until 2025, and even more, even larger investment is needed, around 40 to 60 billion dollars annual investment to reach Paris-aligned net zero emission by 2050. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources also forecasts that to meet net zero emission by 2060, we will need around 1 trillion US dollar investment in an energy sector alone, or around 29 billion US dollar annually. So if you look at the scale of investment needed, Indonesia really needs support from our partners, including South Korea. South Korea company has been one of the key players in Indonesia and energy and industry in the past 2 decades. And the Indonesia transition journey toward decarbonization presents opportunity to South Korea in terms of the retirement of coal asset owned by Korean firm, investment in renewables energy and clean technology, energy storage, and electric vehicles. In essence, both countries, I believe, have a mutual interest in investment opportunities to finance clean energy infrastructure project and technology cooperation. Therefore, there could be a big room for potential cooperation between two countries in achieving their respective economic development and benefit, as well as our climate ambition. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect that this public event can become a moment to advance the agenda. And the result of our discussion could create a concrete deliverables in terms of project, clean energy project in the near future. And lastly, I would like to say thank you again to Her Excellency Jenny Kim, Mr. Gigi Utomo, for your attendance today, and thank you for speaking, and also to all panelists and participants. Thank you very much for your participation in this event. Thank you, good morning, and enjoy this webinar. Return to you, Siha.
Thank you, Mr. Fabi Timiwa, for the opening remarks. And now I would like to invite Her Excellency, Ambassador Hyo-eun Jenny Kim, to deliver her keynote speech about advancing bilateral cooperations for this energy transition between Indonesia and Korea. To Ambassador Jenny Kim, you may have the screen.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fabi Timiwa, Executive Director of Institute for Essential Services Reform, distinguished panelists, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced, this is Hyo-eun Jenny Kim, Deputy Minister and Ambassador for Climate Change from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. First of all, I must say to the Executive Director, thank you for your very kind words, particularly the condolence expressed to the people who suffered for the extreme flooding in this country. Let me congratulate 50th year of bilateral relationship between Korea and Indonesia. Also, I would like to express my appreciation to the Institute for Essential Services Reform and solutions for our climate for organizing this meaningful event. This is very timely, and the topic we are touching upon is indeed essential. Climate change stands as one of the most pressing challenges of our era, as we all agree, and energy transition can be said the most crucial. I want to say the most crucial key to combat climate change. In this sense, I am very pleased to participate in this webinar today, which I believe will contribute in advancing discussions and strengthening bilateral cooperation on energy transition between the two countries. So let me first introduce briefly Korea's effort to address climate change and achieve our nationally determined contribution, NDC, by 2030. Before Glasgow COP in 2021, Korea announced its net zero goal by 2050 and NDC target of 40% reduction of its emission by 2030 from the level of 2018. Even with the launch of new government in 2022, Korea's commitments remain untouched and even further strengthened. On April this year, Korean government introduced its inaugural Basic Plan for Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth, which is outlining annual and sector-specific reduction targets, showing Korea's commitment to effectively implement to achieve NDC target by 2030. Korea is also strongly investing in green technology and energy transition, including batteries, electric vehicles, energy efficiency, green hydrogen, and advanced nuclear technologies. I also take note of Indonesia's efforts to address climate change, including the enhanced NDCs submitted last September and the declaration of carbon neutrality by 2060. I also congratulate the launch of the Indonesia's Just Energy Transition Partnership, JTP, which was announced last November on the occasion of G20 summit. So for both countries, it is very clear we are working very hard to make energy transition. I believe Korea and Indonesia are good partners in terms of energy transition, and we can provide huge opportunity to become a renewable hub and reap for benefits of our energy transition and green growth. On the basis of our long-standing partnership, I think Korea and Indonesia has a huge potential for cooperation to collectively combat climate change, especially in the field of energy transition. Korea has been supporting Indonesia's energy transition through green official development assistance, including solar energy electric vehicle charging system establishment and renewable energy policy capacity building projects. Both Korea and Indonesia are members of Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, working jointly to achieve green and sustainable economic growth. As mentioned already, we are also the members of G20 and many other international alliances and initiatives to make a green transition. Korea is fully committed to further strengthening solidarity on climate change with Indonesia, especially through our dedicated official development assistance program and climate finance contributions. I would like to draw your attention on the ongoing negotiations for the framework agreement for cooperation on climate change between Korea and Indonesia. Once finalized, this agreement will serve as a firm foundation for cooperation in the field of climate change, including joint studies, policy exchanges, technological development, and private sector engagement. Both governments are closely working together to finalize this agreement as early as possible. I believe this agreement will also support both Korea and Indonesia to achieve its respective NDCs and promote private sector's investment in many green areas. Distinguished participants, nowhere in the world is as critical for the clean energy transition as Asia, which accounts for almost half of global energy demand and is today the world's largest, highest emitting region. Korea and Indonesia can play a leading role in accelerating Asia's energy transition with the strong joint actions, not only at the government level, but also inviting private sectors and non-state players. In that sense, I believe the organizations like IESR and SFOC, Solutions for Our Climate, can play a very constructive role in encouraging both governments to make more ambitious and bold decisions to accelerate green energy transition. In both countries, coal is still a major power source. We should accelerate the efforts to phase down the coal. We also should proactively invest more in promoting renewable energy, energy efficiency, and energy storage. We should further build grid infrastructure and increase clean energy mix. Although many challenges remain, I'm convinced that Korea and Indonesia can make a big difference. Today's webinar is a part of that journey. I hope all of you have very constructive discussions today, and this is just a part of our joint efforts, and I'm sure that our joint works will continue. Thank you for your listening.
Okay, so thank you, Ambassador Jenny Kim, for your keynote speech. And now I would like to invite Mr. Gigih Udi Atmo, the Director for Energy Conservation from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources Indonesia, to deliver the keynote speech about Indonesia net zero emission plan and investment need and filling the gap through bilateral cooperations. So to Mr. Gigih Udi Atmo, you may have the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, moderators. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Her Excellency Ms. Yoon Jenny Kim, the Ambassador and Deputy Minister for Climate Change of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Fabi Tumewa, the Executive Director of the Institute for Essential Service Reform, or we known as IESR, distinguished speakers, moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen. So on behalf of the Indonesian government, please allow me to convey our highest appreciation that Indonesia and Korea has very good long cooperation over the last 50 years since 1973 in various sectors. When it comes to the energy sector, the cooperation started in the early 2000, in particularly specifically in 2002, with the signing of MOU on energy between the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy MOTI of the Republic of Korea. Since then, the cooperation has been going very well and getting stronger. And now we are moving into the new area of close relationship on how we are together as a countries to combat the climate change, as well as to in line with the energy security issue with regard to the transitions. Ladies and gentlemen, so when it comes to Indonesian net zero emission roadmap, the Indonesian government has developed a roadmap of net zero emission targets that by 2060, we are aiming to decarbonize our energy sectors more than 90% from the business as usual. By doing so, we will, the effort to do is to reach the peak emission in our energy sectors before 2040. And specifically, it is between 2035 and 2040, with the amount of CO2 emission around 700 and less than 750 million tons of CO2 emissions. This is such a very big effort that needed to be taken, because in order to do so, meaning that we have to reduce the emission from the business as usual, which is well above 1,000 million tons of CO2 emissions. So various efforts need to be taken from the supply and on the demand sides. So as we can see that on the supply, we have to transform our power sector particularly to reach to decarbonize our power sectors before 2060. In our roadmap, we aiming to fully supply the electricity from the renewable energy supply before 2058 by retiring of all natural strategy, our coal power plants. As the Excellency Ambassador mentioned, that coal decarbonization is one of the key strategies. And also Mr. Fabi Tumewa also mentioned about the early retirement of coal power plants. So we are now developing a roadmap of coal power plants. So the coal power plant early retirement will require support from the international organization and countries, such as through the JETP or other mechanism. Through the JETP, we expect, or Just Energy Transition Partnership, we will expect support to how we can reduce our coal power plants before 2030, as Fabi already mentioned, that we aiming to reduce in a number between 4 to 5 gigawatt of that existing coal fleet. But once again, this is subject to the availability of support of finance in terms of grant, concessional loan that can be make it commercially viable to do so. And at the same time, as we can see that while we are reducing our coal power plants, we're also aiming to increase the share of renewable energy. As you can see that on the left, we can see that the share of renewable will gradually increase, in particularly after 2030. By 2030, we're aiming to add almost 21 gigawatt of new additional renewable energies coming from a combination between geothermal, hydropower, solar PV, and other technology, including wind power and others. This will require not just large deployment of fund and finance, but also technology that some of those technology might not be available or not be commercially viable up to this stage. Particularly when it comes to beyond 2030, we need to think of how we can incorporate advanced fuel or technology such as green hydrogen or ammonia into our energy supply system. So how we can, for example, introduce hydrogen in our transport systems, in particularly heavy-duty vehicles or long-distance vehicles, as well as on how we can introduce hydrogen for industry, which is hard to abate, for example, in fertilizers, iron and steel, and petrochemicals. This is the challenge that both countries need to face and also work together, because we are living in the climate challenge situation whereby we need collectively and globally to limit the temperature rise well below 2 degrees, or if it is possible, we aiming to reach temperature rise to limit up to only 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. There are quite a number of challenges. Also, as the Excellency Ambassador mentioned, that the first challenge is how we can meet our NDC target. So Indonesia has raised the ambition on NDC, as Pak Fabi already explained that. But then 2030, we raised the emission on the energy sector particularly, will reduce up to 258 million tons of CO2 emissions. This is around 22% of the emission reductions compared to the business as usual. Of course, tremendous challenge, as also highlighted by the ambassador and also Mr. Fabi Tumewa. Energy efficiency is one of the key strategies, but we also understand that we need also to decarbonize our supply systems. And on the right, we can see that we understand that we have a large number of renewable energy potentials. The key strategy is how we can interconnect between the supply side into the demand side. So the demand is particularly located in islands of Java, Bali, and Sumatra, whereas the renewable energy sources are distributed in different regions. So one of the key strategy is how to interconnect using the HV DC transmission line and substations. So this will require a large amount of investment, but also advanced technology. This is another key area where we can work together. As Indonesia, we can combine cooperation and collaboration between the two countries. We have minerals that are needed for the energy transition, such as for how we can combine or produce nickel from our, to produce battery from our nickel resources. We have technology, we have resources that, nickel resources within the island of Sulawesi, that we are the largest nickel reserve in the world. We can convert our nickel into battery, where later on it will be used to decarbonize our transport system. So in the transport itself, with the EV program, the government EV programs of aiming to have 2 million EV cars by 2030, and 13 million of two-wheelers of EV by the same year, 2030, we will require battery capacity in total more than 100 gigawatt hours. We understand this is a tremendous challenge. How we can provide that to convert that nickel resource, raw nickel resource into the battery production, into the EV system. That's why we have to cooperate. And once again, we thank you for support from Republic of Korea and also from both from the government and also from industry. We have initiated and started that process. So we also appreciate the cooperation between the two countries through the, as Pak Faibi mentioned, we need to turn in this vision into action and later on into projects. One of the key projects that we are currently work together is on the Korea-Indonesia e-mobility cooperation centers. We work together with Korea Institute for Advanced of Technology, KIAT. This cooperation is aiming to raise the sales of electric motorcycles, doubling by 2035, and electric cars by 2040. This is one of the key examples and how we can bring together the vision, the combined vision of energy transition into action and then move into specific projects. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand that the challenge is not just on the supply side, we also need to decarbonize on the demand side. So on the demand side, there are various challenges, how we can increase or the ambition to reduce the energy intensity, which currently Indonesia is every year on average have 1.3% of energy intensity reduction on the demand sides. We need to work harder if we would like to decarbonize our energy system, because energy efficiency as the first fuels need to go further, that we, on average, we have to reduce our energy intensity 1.8% every year up to 2060. This is tremendous challenge, but I think if we work together, we can overcome that situations. And in particular, the government just recently released the government regulation number 33, year 2023, which focusing on energy conservation, expanding the mandatory implementation of the energy management on various sectors, from the industry, transport, and commercial buildings, as well as government facilities. So this we can use as a momentum on how particularly we can decarbonize our energy systems and how we can move into decarbonizing our industrial system, industry sectors, such that we can make it the industry more competitive, because as we know that the global challenge will require specific low carbon intensity on the product that going to sell overseas or for the export markets. So if we work together, we can identify subsectors, for example, iron and steel, cement, petrochemicals, and other sectors that we can decarbonize, such that when this product come into the market, they are competitive to meet the demand or the compliance requirement at the other side on the importing countries. So I think if we work together to find technologies, to invest in best available technologies, we can work to identify and also doing a concrete action to decarbonize our industry sectors. And on the appliances sector, this is residential sector, most of them, we appreciate that Korea has been successfully introduced what we call minimum energy performance standards over more than 20 appliances. So in the case of Indonesia, we're aiming that by 2030, we will implement at least 11 appliances which has minimum energy performance standards. This is very important for us because even with the 5 that already implemented up to 2022, which is air conditioner, refrigerator, rice cookers, LED, and also fans, just over the few months up to May, we have reduced the electricity consumption 2.1 terawatt hours, and also reduce the carbon emission 3.7 million ton of CO2 emission. The result is very obvious because we track the result through our online monitoring system. So if we can expand this cooperation on the supply and also on the demand sectors through several concrete action, we can work together to reach our joint target and joint vision on energy transition to combat the climate change. With that, I would like to conclude. And once again, I would like to thank you for this long-term partnership between the two countries. Hopefully, we can continue this partnership over the next decade and so, such that we can work together on addressing the challenge on energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Didi, for your keynote speech. And now we would like to go to the next session, which is the panel presentation. And I would like to give the screen to our colleague from Solutions for Our Climate, Mr. Dong Jae-oh, as the moderator. So now I will pass the control of the event to you, Mr. Dong Jae-oh.
Thank you, and IASR team. Before we start, I'd like to deliver a warm welcome to participants who are watching this panel discussion through Zoom and YouTube, and also to the distinguished panelists for joining the session on mobilizing finance between South Korea and Indonesia for renewable energy transition. I'm Dong Jae-oh from Solutions for Our Climate, and I am really delighted and honored to be the moderator for this insightful panel discussion. As briefly mentioned at the previous keynote speeches, both Indonesia and South Korean governments are going through transitioning pathway from fossil fuels to renewables. At the last RUPTL, Indonesian government raised this ambition of deploying renewables, while curbing their previous ambitions for fossil fuel-based power plants. On the other hand, South Korean government also recently committed to achieve $4.5 billion scale renewable export by 2030. Government also set up a plan to support $150 million into global green export insurance projects. As a core partner countries, both countries have huge potentials at expanding renewables and green industry infrastructures. As you got to know overall landscape of Indonesian government's plan and South Korean's ambition to cooperate, from now on, we'll deep dive into each panelist's discussions. Before we begin, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to all our esteemed panelists for generously sharing their expertise and insights with us today. Your contributions today are invaluable, fostering sustainable development of renewable energies and both countries' cooperation. For the panelists, starting from Mr. Kahyo Purnomo, Mr. Park Chang-hee, Mr. Jung Eun-ho, Mr. Yunan Fajar Arianto will each have 15 minutes to present their perspectives and insights on the theme. We believe their insights will provide valuable guidance in achieving sustainable cooperation between two countries. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Kahyo Purnomo, Deputy for Investment Promotion of Ministry of Investment in Indonesia, which is also called as BKEM, Badan Koordinasi Penanaman Modal. Yeah, Mr. Kayo Purnomo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Dongje. Let me begin my presentation with a greeting to all the participants, particularly Her Excellency Hyun Jenny Kim and Pak Fabi Tumia, of course, our host. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Pak Fabi, and of course Pak Gigi from the Minister of Energy and Resources, the previous keynote speaker, and certainly my other panelists. I'm delivering actually this presentation from China. I just arrived early in the morning in China, and my apologies. Right after this, I need to leave as I have another appointment. Let me begin my presentation. Can I have the slide, please? I think next slide. I think it's very clear, Pak Fabi has mentioned, the closer relations between two countries, between Indonesia and Korea. And this can be seen, from the exchange visits between the two leaders. When our president, last year, made a trip to Korea, to Seoul, and also when President Korea, also came to Bali, during the G20 summit. Next slide. The other reason why Korea is, strategic partner for Indonesia from investment perspective is the fact that Korea is always, one of the largest investors in Indonesia. You name it, from 2018, all the way to last year, for instance. South Korea is always, in our top 7 largest foreign investment in Indonesia. And if we go deeper, this is something that we really appreciate, as their investment is also, in a sectors that belong in our top priority investment list, like electricity, like automotive. Pak Gi has mentioned on the electric vehicle and also the drive towards renewable energy. And with this, I'm quite confident, that in the future, in the near future, we can really, seize every opportunity to really, take these relations into the next level. Next slide. And this is also something that is quite important for us, to take note how the global FDI, has rebounded, by 64% after falling, during the pandemic, by 35%. And of course, everybody now is looking forward to really be able, to grow, to fully recover, And we've seen, how according to the UNCTAD, for instance, the sustainable investment, went up from 2020, right after, during the pandemic, and from 219 million into 371 million dollars. So it gives a clear picture, and how in Indonesia we also been trying to basically align, our investment performance with also our target for the sustainable development goals. Next slide. And when it comes to, the energy transitions, and of course, sustainability, it plays an important role, and that's why we would like also to basically, take every opportunity to be able to address our so-called homework, to really be able to, do more. And I think from Pak Gigi's presentation earlier, as the Minister of Energy and Resources is the so-called the main contact point when it comes to all issues related with energy, and we can clearly see that I hope I'm not exaggerating to say that we are on track to basically achieve our target. Next slide. When it comes to investment around the world, of course, people now tend to really be more cautious when it comes to where to invest, for instance. That's why in many surveys, for instance, they always think of ESG, the environment, social, and governance, as the main concern. So before they do investment, before they seek new investment opportunities, they always have something like this in mind, And of course, if we take a look how the consumer behaviors, now the consumers are, looking forward to having more and more, sustainable products. They will be very, cautious, Even in Indonesia, for instance, the millennials, for instance, they really, they don't want to, for instance, buy mineral water using plastic bottle, for instance, because they know the harmful effect to the environment. So that's why they tend to bring their own tumbler, because I would say now younger generation, they have more responsibility. And the good thing is, it seems like, they are now very, environment conscious people. Next slide. Of course, when it comes to our, commitment, this has been shared by Pak Gigi earlier, how, where do we need to go from now, all the way to 2050 and 2060. That's why, during the UN FCC, our president made also the commitment, and also when attending the COP, in Glasgow, for instance, and even in our State of the National address last year. So it gives you a clear idea how Indonesia is fully committed, toward green energy. Next slide, please. Of course, the roadmap, has been shared by Pak Gigi earlier, so I don't want to go into the detail. Basically, it gives you a clear idea how do we move forward, step by step, all the way to 2050 and 2060. Next slide. And of course, one of the key issues, is on how do we, really engage in innovation, as we understand the energy transition is now becoming, a so-called, must-have, That's why our energy mix is also to basically combine all the, business as a user scenario, including, the with or without, for instance, word support, because we also need to be more, basically independent, but we understand our position, where we still, as I think Ambassador Kim mentioned earlier, Indonesia, still reliant on coal, and from Pak Gigi, we understand the roadmap, for coal phase out is there. So I think with this, I'm quite confident, that again Indonesia is on track, to achieve whatever the targets that we have. Next slide. Of course, when it comes to the renewable energy acceleration, it's very important to basically invite more and more investment, in the renewable sectors, in geothermal, for instance, or in the wind power, and so on and so forth, including, the thing that has been shared earlier, the electric vehicle. And South Korea, as we all know, South Korea is very keen, to seek every opportunity. And I'm happy to say that I think we've been dealing, with, foreign, definitely they are one of the largest foreign investors in Korea and also in the world, who has the capability, the knowledge, the expertise to really, go into this renewable energy, And I'm also quite confident that the current discussion now with the Indonesian government, hopefully, it can be as productive as possible. And at the end of the day, hopefully we'll be able to welcome, their investment in Indonesia on the battery materials, and including the ecosystem for electric vehicle, So we are talking about a whole new ecosystem from the upstream all the way to downstream. Next slide, please. Now, as some of you are, already familiar with some of our, actually this is also our situation where we would like to invite foreign investment, and this is also the situation where we need to basically attract and basically attract large investment in the renewable with a total of close to 21 gigawatts, and you can imagine this is spread all over Indonesia and across many sectors, not only geothermal or solar photovoltaic, but also in the hydropower, and other things, and when it comes to Korean investment in Indonesia, I'm quite happy, that Korean investment are having a strong presence in some of these, and it would be, most welcome if the Korean investor also would like to seek other opportunities, for instance, in our geothermal, and I think this is, would be, also a good opportunity for us, to basically offer these investment opportunities. Next slide. And as I said earlier, of course, the opportunities is always there, to basically, move beyond, the natural resources. Indonesia, as a country which is blessed with rich mineral resources, of course, in the past, we used to export our unprocessed mineral resources. Now we would like to welcome investment, in the downstream, for instance, to basically, do the domestic processing somewhere in Indonesia across many sectors, like in mining, for instance, in nickel, in coal, and, even our fisheries, and so on and so forth. So now what we call as hilirisasi or downstream investment is becoming, a major issue in Indonesia, where our president is fully committed, to basically, take the country to the next level. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at all the, green economy and renewable energy, of course, our main strategies, one of them is on the, introduction of the green and low carbon economy. So everywhere, we've been trying to basically, deal with this issue. And also, of course, we have other things, for instance, the most now hot issue is on the national capital relocation, where the new capital is, poised to be, the so-called the smart city, the green city, the eco city, and so on and so forth, So with this, we would like to offer, a policy which is pro-business, and by, among other, by introducing, attractive incentive in the renewable energy. So renewable energy is one of our investment priority sectors. Next slide. Last but not least, I think this is almost the end of my presentation. Again, as I said to you earlier, what we have in mind is to basically, create a whole ecosystem, for the EV, for the electric vehicle industry, all the way from upstream, from the mining of the nickel ore, into the nickel sulfate or, MHP, something like that. And all the way into the precursors, cathodes, battery cell, battery pack, energy storage, charging station, In fact, now I think some of the contract contacted me on the possibility of, charging station in Indonesia. And last but not least is, of course, the battery recycling, because after some time, maybe after 5, 7, 8 years, those batteries need to be fully, recycled, And I'm quite happy to say that from, our current engagement, Korean investors, has expressed strong interest, to be part of this so-called ecosystem for EV industry. And as you can see, the LG Energy Solution, for instance, along with other Korean companies, like POSCO, Hyundai, and so forth, I think they are about to make a new history in Indonesia. Next slide. I think this is, in addition to our previous slide, this is also, basically our new approach when it comes to, shifting from primary sectors into the value-added industry. As Indonesia is blessed with, for instance, nickel, as we, thankfully, the largest reserve of nickel in the world, with close to roughly 22-25%. And we would like to basically invite investment, on not only, we use nickel for, let's say, nickel pig iron for stainless steel, but also for the battery materials, So as you can see, after the so-called, export ban, now, as you can see, our trade balance, is now becoming much more healthy, so-called, the number of our iron, steel, and battery material export, has increased almost, 10 times, from $10 billion in 2014, close to $28.2 billion, last year. So with this, I think again, as I said to you earlier, we are quite confident that we are on track, and by inviting foreign investors to be part of this shifting, I think it will be a win-win, not only for Indonesia but also for the foreign investors. Next slide. And of course, the incentive is always there. The so-called government investment policy is always be there to simplify all the rules and regulation, to address all the so-called the bottlenecking or backlogs, and of course it's also important for us to provide tax incentives, in the name of tax holiday, tax allowance, and so on and so forth. Next slide. Last but not least is on our omnibus law on job creation. This is, basically the game changer where we, revise all the sectoral laws, close to 80 laws have been revised into one single laws, and to basically, put a single platform to connect all the stakeholders, all the 18 ministries, from different sectors into one single platform, So with this, foreign investor, domestic investor, even our small and medium enterprises really benefit from this single platform. They will be able to submit their investment application 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wherever they are, And with this, I think we are quite confident, the investment will be even more attractive. Next slide. This is what we do at the Minister of Investment or BKPM. Our approach is always end-to-end to provide, all the support that are needed by the investors, not only by, for instance, an event like this, but, should for investors, express certain things, they need, let's say they want to make a visit to Indonesia, they want to visit, a potential location, they want to be in touch with potential local partner, we'll be more than happy to them, including should they have some difficulties in getting all the licenses, not only from the central government, but also from the local government. So with that, I think we will be able to provide, the so-called, red carpet for investor in Indonesia. And again, our team at the Ministry of Investment, we have what we call as a Korean team, even we also have Korean desk, chaired by somebody from Cosmic Korea. So with this, I think it's very clear for you when it comes to investment facilitation, whatever you need, we are always at your disposal. I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle, for the wonderful presentation. It was really great to hear Indonesians' plan for the getting investments from other countries and plan for the energy transition. Before we go over to the next panelist, I wanted to share my plan for the Q&A sessions. Before we start, I plan to have a Q&A session if time allows, so that I can ask one or two questions to our each panelist. But as you unfortunately need to leave early, I'd like to give you a really brief question to you, which was it was quite shocking to see that the renewable deployment plan for Indonesian governments starting from 2030 to 2050 is so huge and vast. And I guess other countries are already would start talking to investing their investing their companies through the renewable expansion in Indonesia. So would you mind would you like to, if you could, it would be great if you could share some cases of other countries who are already planning or who already committed expansion of their investments to renewable deployment of Indonesia.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dongjae, for the questions. Of course, some data, some information I cannot provide to you. I cannot disclose their names, not until their commitment is fully realized, As I believe, again, some companies, some foreign investors, they always express, some of so-called their message to us, please not to disclose their names, not after things are becoming very clear, loud and clear, that they basically can publicly declare their investment in Indonesia. But as you can see from my previous slides, the so-called Korean consortiums, on the EV ecosystem, is I think everybody knows about that. So we are talking about Indonesian so-called investors, potential partners, our mining agents, company by the name of the Antam, by the name of the Indonesian Battery Corporation, and so on and so on. They've been discussing with the LG consortium, the so-called, and I'm happy. I think last 2 weeks our senior officials went to Seoul, and I think in early next month, in early August, I think we will welcome strong delegation from Korea, to basically discuss existing terms, existing so-called pending issues, and hopefully by then we'll be able to basically close the deal. Of course, from other countries like China, they also share the strong interest, not only on the EV development, but also on the so-called ecosystem for solar panel. Basically, this is also one of the main intention of our minister. Now our minister is about to arrive in China in the afternoon, and one of the program is to basically introduce these Chinese companies, as they will have huge investment somewhere in Indonesia. I think I will disclose the name once. Again, of course you can easily Google if you want. I think you won't find it difficult, for you. But again, for me, I will disclose the name later on, and then so on and so forth. Of course, other countries, in particular, U.S. automakers, for instance, they also have the strong interest. Also, other countries, and so on and so forth. Even I think if you also know that the UAE, for instance, they just also invested in the subsidiary of Pertamina. As one of the subsidiary of Pertamina, they are the so-called specials in the geothermal, So these UAE companies, I think, have been basically able to be the single so-called minority shareholder, at this SOE, as these the own companies at the Pertamina subsidiary. So with this, I think we can, as I said to you earlier, I think I'm quite confident that basically Indonesia is maybe for many countries, too good to miss, meaning all the investment opportunities in Indonesia, are basically too good to miss. That's why, and let me quote, the statement from our central bank governor, and I'm quite surprised, to be honest, when in one of the function in one of the investment forum in Dubai, the central bank governor, because this is also the first time, the central bank governor hosted a special investment forum where he openly said, make your investment now before it is too late. So let me conclude with that. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kayo. Apologize if my question was sensitive to disclose at that stage. But thank you for your answer for my question. And yeah, I hope cooperation between South Korea and Indonesian government would be the front runner to disclose as a key cooperation cases next time. Thank you for your presentation. And I think we need to move on to the second presenter. I'd like to introduce Mr. Park Jang-hee, Senior Director at Project Finance Department of Korea Trade Insurance Corporation. As you know, K-SURE is one of our expert credit agencies in South Korea, who's leading the cooperation of South Korean corporates and the international countries outside of South Korea. Mr. Park Jang-hee will present with you on K-SURE's policy to support renewable energy financing and relevant cases that K-SURE have piled up, and which could be potentially pursued with the cooperation between South Korea and Indonesia. Thank you, Mr. Park Jang-hee, for attending this conference, and you have 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, the moderator. Before starting my presentation, I just check with you, Mr. Oh, can I present in Korean language or should I in English?
We provide English translation, so I will be able to present it in Korean.
Okay, thank you. 감사합니다. 이런 좋은 자리에 저희 K-SURE를 대표해서 발표를 할 수 있도록 기회를 주신 것에 대해서 감사드립니다. Is it okay to the translation is working fine? Okay, thank you. 제가 오늘 발표드릴 내용은 인도네시아 재생에너지 프로젝트 금융 조달을 위한 지원 제도 및 사례의 내용입니다. 먼저 발표 전에 제가 이제 재킷을 입고 있다가 실내 온도 때문에 좀 재킷을 벗었습니다. 좀 양해 부탁드립니다. 저희도 에너지 절감과 또 탄소 배출 절감을 위해서 또 내부 실내 온도를 제한하고 있어서 뚝불 재킷을 좀 벗었다는 점 양해 부탁드립니다. 그리고 제가 지금 현재 있는 부서에 이번 달에 사실 부임했습니다. 그래서 과거에 진행됐었던 어떤 사례나 이런 부분에 대해서는 제가 사실 잘 알지 못해서 그런 부분도 사실 사전에 좀 양해를 좀 부탁드리고요. 제가 오늘 발표할 내용은 주로 이제 현재 저희 K-SURE에서 인도네시아 재생에너지 프로젝트를 위해서 어떻게 지원할 수 있는지, 어떤 제도를 가지고 있는지 그것을 중심으로 발표를 좀 하도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 제가 오늘 발표하는 내용은 저의 개인적인 의견임을 양지해 주시기 바랍니다. 공사의 공식적인 의견이 아님을 양지해 주시기 바랍니다. 발표 슬라이드를 좀 올려주시면 좋겠는데요. 발표 자료가 준비가 안 되면 혹시 준비가 되나요?
I think I can share the screen. If the host could if host let me share the screen, I can share the screen of the Mr. Park Sang-in.
Okay, thank you. 네, 슬라이드가 뜨기 전에 일단 제가 발표할 내용은 저희 K-SURE에 대한 간단한 소개와 두 번째로 재생에너지 지원 관련 저희 지원 프로그램, 세 번째로는 재생에너지 관련 저희가 최근에 지원했던 사례, 이렇게 세 가지로 발표를 드리겠습니다. Next slide, please. 다음 장으로 좀 넘겨주시겠습니까? 예. 오늘 발표 순서는 방금 말씀드린 것처럼 세 가지로 하겠습니다. 첫 번째, 저희 K-SURE에 대해서 소개를 좀 드리겠습니다. 저희 무역공사는 해외 자본재 프로젝트 관련해서 우리 기업이 참여하는 수출 또는 해외 투자 거래에 중장기 금융을 제공하는 공적 수출 신용 기관입니다. 우리나라 기업이 수출이나 Is it okay or should I hear some noise from the screen. Is it okay? Continue? Or should I change language into English?
I think you could proceed, and the host could mute some of the participants.
Okay. Thank you. 네.
Sorry for the confusion.
Thank you. 그래서 저희 공적 수출 신용 기관으로서 저희는 국내 기업이 수출이나 해외 사업 등의 방식으로 참여하는 재생에너지 프로젝트에 상업은행이 대출을 실행하고 저희 K-SURE가 은행에 보증을 제공하는 방식으로 금융을 도달할 수 있도록 지원해주고 있습니다. 저희 공사는 한국이 1999년도에 OECD에 가입한 이래로 저희도 OECD 수출 신용 협약에 참여하고 있으며 이에 따라서 저희는 OECD 수출 신용 협약 관련 OECD 수출 신용 관련 협약이나 관련 정책에 따라서 금융 조건을 적용하고 또 뇌물 방지나 환경 사회 심사 등을 현재 수행하고 있습니다. 저희 공사는 1968년 공사의 사업 근거법인 수출보험법이 제정되었고 92년도에 저희가 한국수출보험공사로 설립이 되었으며 2010년 한국무역보험공사로 재출범하게 되었습니다. 저희와 같이 현재 OECD 수출 신용 협약과 관련 정책을 따르고 있는 ECA들이 있는데요. 그 OECD 회원국 38개국 중에 약 34개국이 공적 수출 신용기관을 운영하고 있고 대부분의 공적 수출 신용기관들은 OECD에서 관장하고 있는 수출 신용 협약과 정책을 따르고 있습니다. 다음 장 부탁드립니다. Next slide, please. 네, 저희 재생에너지 관련 지원 제도를 간단하게 소개해 드리겠습니다. 먼저 재생에너지를 지원하는 데 있어서 저희가 두 가지 상품을 주로 운영을 하고 있습니다. 첫 번째는 중장기 수출 보험이고요. 두 번째는 해외 사업 금융 보험입니다. 두 상품의 차이는 지원 근거에서 일단 좀 보실 수 있는데요. 우리나라 기업이 수출 계약을 체결했을 경우는 중장기 수출 보험으로 저희가 지원을 하게 되고, 우리나라 기업이 생산물을 구매하거나 아니면 O&M 컨트랙터가 되거나 이런 우리나라의 수출이 아닌 우리나라의 국익 창출에 기여하는 형태의 어떤 다른 비즈니스 참여를 할 때 이럴 때는 해외 사업 금융 보험으로 저희가 지원을 하고 있습니다. 그 두 상품에 따라서 저희가 지원할 수 있는 최대 한도가 조금 다릅니다. 중장기 수출 보험 같은 경우에는 엑스포트 컨트랙트 밸류의 85%와 로컬 코스트 일부를 최대 지원 한도로 삼고 있고, 해외 사업 금융 보험 같은 경우는 총 사업비의 100%까지 최대로 저희가 지원할 수 있는 상황입니다. 그리고 맥시멈 리페이먼트 텀은 신재생 에너지 경우는 22 years, 22년까지로 되어 있습니다. 통상 신재생 에너지가 아닌 경우에는 최대 15년까지만 저희가 최장 상환 기간을 부여할 수 있게 되어 있습니다. 구체적으로 지원 상품 관련해서 도해를 한번 보시면 조금 더 이해하기 쉬울 것 같습니다. 중장기 수출 보험은 앞전에 말씀드렸던 것처럼 우리 기업이 수출 기업으로서 수출 계약이 체결되고 그래서 해외 수입자, 즉 인도네시아 기업이 될 수 있겠죠. 인도네시아 수입자가 우리나라 수출 기업과 수출 계약을 체결한 경우 저희가 그 수출 계약에 근거해서 상업은행이 대출을 하도록 중장기 외화 대출을 하도록 통상 지원을 하고, 저희는 그 상업은행에 보증을 제공함으로써 상업은행이 해당 프로젝트에 대출을 할 수 있도록 만들어주는 구조가 되겠습니다. 두 번째, 해외 사업 금융보험은 우리나라 기업이 비단 수출이 아니고 해외 Is it okay?
Yeah, I think you can proceed.
Okay. 예, 두 번째 해외 사업 금융보험은 우리나라 기업이 수출이 아닌 지분 투자를 한다거나 에쿼티 인베스터가 된다거나 오프테이커가 된다거나 이런 형태로 해외에서 프로젝트가 진행될 때 우리나라 기업이 그런 지분 투자나 생산물 구입이나 이런 형태로 참여하게 되는 경우 동일하게 금융기관이 그 해당 프로젝트에 장기 외화 대출을 하고 저희는 그 금융기관에 보증을 제공하는 형태로 금융 조달이 되도록 저희가 지원하고 있습니다. 다음 장 부탁드립니다. Next slide, please. 네. 마지막으로 저희 지원 사례를 두 가지만 간단하게 소개해 드리겠습니다. 첫 번째는 앙골라 솔라 파워 프로젝트입니다. 이 건의 경우는 저희 우리나라 기업이 수출 계약을 체결한 경우가 되겠습니다. 프로젝트 개요는 앙골라 정부가 전력 보급을 추진하는 태양광 발전 프로젝트에 우리나라 기업이 참여를 하게 되고 또 독일 기업도 참여를 하고 있었습니다. 그래서 독일 기업이 더 많은 부분을 참여를 하고 있었기에 독일 ECA가 먼저 금융 지원의 일선에 서고 프론트에 서고 저희가 다시 이걸 재보험으로 인수하는 형태로 우리 기업이 참여한 수출분에 대해서 저희가 지원을 한 프로젝트가 되겠습니다. 슬라이드 아래쪽을 보시면 구조도가 좀 나와 있는데요. 네, 프로젝트 구조도를 보시면 왼쪽 상단에 죄송합니다. 오른쪽 상단에 앙골라 재무부가 이 사업의 지급 보증인이 되고요. 그 아래쪽에 메인 컨트랙트라고 해서 이 프로젝트를 실제로 운영하는 그 해외 앙골라 기업 이 메인 컨트랙터가 되겠습니다. 그래서 이 앙골라 재무부 쪽에 상업은행이 약 12억 불 정도의 장기 대출금을 공여하게 되는 프로젝트였고요. 이 경우에 먼저 독일의 ECA인 율러 헤르메스가 그 상업은행에 보증을 제공하고 저희는 그 율러 헤르메스 뒤에서 한국의 컨텐츠에 대해서 다시 재보증하는 형태로 이 프로젝트의 금융 조달을 지원한 사례가 되겠습니다. 제일 오른쪽 하단에 보시면 서브 컨트랙트로서 저머니도 있고 코리아도 있고 포르투갈도 있고 이런 여러 가지 여러 국가의 기업들이 멀티하게 참여한 프로젝트여서 이 프로젝트 같은 경우는 독일 ECA도 참여하고 한국 ECA도 참여한 그런 케이스가 되겠습니다. 그 다음 장 부탁드립니다. Next slide, please. 네, 다음 장. 예. 다음 사례는 미국 윈드 파워 컨스트럭션 프로젝트입니다. 이 프로젝트는 저희 공사가 K-슈어가 단독으로 지원한 프로젝트가 되겠습니다. 이 프로젝트는 국내 한국의 풍력 타워 제조사가 미국 콜로라도에 현재 운영 중이었던 풍력 타워 제조 공장을 증설하는 그런 프로젝트였습니다. 그래서 이 공장 증설 프로젝트에 대해서 저희가 해외 사업 금융 보험을 제공한 사례가 되겠습니다. 그 프로젝트 구조도를 이것도 간단하게 보시면 한국 오른쪽 상단에 한국의 모 기업이 존재하고 이 한국의 모 기업이 미국의 현지 해외 법인을 설립해서 현지 공장을 운영하고 있었던 상태였고요. 방금 말씀드렸던 것처럼 이 미국 현지 공장의 설비를 증설해서 제조 캐파를 늘리는 그런 프로젝트였습니다. 그래서 이 한국 기업의 미국 현지 법인의 상업은행이 약 5천만 불 정도의 대출금을 장기로 공여하는 프로젝트였고요. 여기에 마찬가지로 상업은행에 저희가 보증을 제공함으로써 실제로 이 프로젝트가 금융 조달이 될 수 있도록 만들어준 프로젝트가 되겠습니다. 네, 이상입니다.
Thank you, Mr. Park Jang-hee, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you especially that we asked for the presentation material within such an imminent time. Thanks to Mr. Park has secured some time for the presentation. We've still got 1 minute to briefly give you a brief question to you. So I'd like to ask you about what would be needed to encourage Korea's renewable industries and Korea's industry to accelerate their expansion and accelerate their cooperation with Indonesian government in the perspective of K-슈어. So what kind of support would be needed or what kind of challenges that would be facing in your perspective from K-슈어?
네, 감사합니다. 방금 몇 가지 사례에서도 말씀을 드렸고, 또 아까 좀 전에 그 인도네시아 투자 조정청 국장님도 몇 번 언급하셨듯이 최근에 저희 나라 기업이 재생에너지와 또 2차 전지 이런 여러 가지 신산업 분야에서 아주 다양한 활동 그리고 국제 경쟁력을 갖추고 그렇게 활동을 하고 있습니다. 그런 우리 기업을 저희가 최대한 적극적으로 지원하는 것이 저희 그 K-슈어의 미션이기 때문에 그런 부분에 대해서 저희 기업과 다각도로 항상 기업의 어떤 금융적인 부분에서 애로가 무엇인지 그리고 또 특히 이제 인도네시아 같은 경우 여러 가지 기업이 겪고 있는 그런 금융적인 측면에서의 애로가 무엇인지 그런 부분에 대해서 정기적으로 저희가 늘 협의를 긴밀하게 하고 있고요. 특히 이제 그 재생에너지와 관련돼서는 저희도 어떤 지원 한도라든가 아니면 저희가 보증을 하게 될 때 그 보증에 상응하는 보증을 제공하는 데에 따른 리스크를 떠안게 되기 때문에 거기에 따른 보험료를 저희가 받게 되는데 그런 경우에 일정 부분 할인을 한다든가 이런 방식으로 이런 신재생에너지의 프로젝트들이 좀 더 활발하게 진행될 수 있도록 우리 기업을 지원하는 그리고 그게 나아가서 한국과 인도네시아의 재생에너지 프로젝트가 좀 더 재생에너지 산업이 좀 더 활발하게 이루어질 수 있도록 하는데 기여하고 있다고 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer question. As a follow-up to the government's commitment to expand renewable export by 2030, we expect there would be ECA's effort also to discover and support renewable industries who are keen on exporting their facilities and their energy into the other countries. Thank you for your presentation again. I would like to introduce our third panelist. We have Mr. Jung Eun-ho, Senior Advisor for Solutions for Our Climate. Mr. Jung Eun-ho formerly worked for KEPCO as a Vice President of Overseas Project Development and also as a President of KEPCO's Economy and Management Research Institute. Mr. Jung Eun-ho, the floor is yours. You have also 15 minutes. Thank you.
예, 안녕하세요. 정은호입니다. 인도네시아하고 한국의 지속 가능한 발전을 위해서 양국의 협력 방안을 모색하는 자리에서 말씀을 드릴 수 있게 돼 대단히 기쁘게 생각합니다. 저는 앞서 여러분들이 상당히 거대 담론 차원에서 말씀을 하셨지만은 좀 에너지 전환에 좀 국한해가지고 말씀 좀 드리고 싶고요. 그리고 약간 비판적인 시각을 제 나름대로 그 비판적인 시각을 좀 많이 담지 않을 수 없다는 것을 먼저 이렇게 말씀드리겠습니다. 에너지 전환을 얘기한다면 에너지 전환이 지속 가능한 발전에서 매우 중요한 역할을 하고 있는데 에너지 전환을 말씀드리려고 한다면은 장표를 준비하지 않았습니다. 워낙 급하게 얘기를 들어가지고 죄송하게 생각합니다. 에너지 전환을 말씀드리려고 한다면 국가 온실가스 감축 목표와 관련지어서 얘기를 풀어나가는 것이 올바르다고 생각합니다. 잘 아시겠지만 한국 같은 경우는 2030년 NDC 목표를 40%로 확정했습니다. 인도네시아는 43.2%로 설정하였죠. 양국이 좀 비슷한 수준으로 보입니다. 그런데 NDC 달성을 위한 에너지 부분의 역할에 있어 그는 양국의 커다란 차이가 납니다. 인도네시아 같은 경우는 온실가스 감축을 위해 가지고 NDC 목표 달성을 위해서 에너지 부분의 역할이 15.5% 정도를 설정하고 있습니다. 반면에 한국에서는 전력과 열을 생산하는 에너지 전환 부분의 감축 목표가 자그마치 45.9%나 달합니다. 단순한 비율로만 따진다고 하면은 인도네시아의 거의 3배에 육박하는 커다란 비중을 차지하고 있죠. 그렇다 보니까 한국에서는 당연하게 에너지 전환에 박차를 가해야 됩니다. 현재 한국의 에너지 믹스를 보면, 전력 믹스를 보면은 화력 발전이 화석연료가 한 60%를 좀 넘게 차지하고 있는데요. 정부 계획대로 한다면 2030년까지 그걸 한 40% 수준까지 낮춰야 됩니다. 대신에 신재생 에너지의 비중을 21.6%까지 올릴 계획입니다. 이걸 위해 가지고 현재 재생에너지 설비가 규모로 따져서 용량으로 따져서 한 29기가와트 정도 있는데요. 30년까지 73기가와트까지 늘려야 됩니다. 이거를 매년 늘려야 되는 용량으로 본다면 매년 한 5에서 6기가와트 정도의 재생에너지 설비를 늘려야 됩니다. 뭐 그런 상당히 거창해 보이는데 그 실상을 보면 좀 약간 좀 초라합니다. 무슨 말씀이냐면은 한국의 전력 믹스에서 재생에너지가 차지하는 비중이 겨우 7%를 이제 간신히 넘은 상태입니다. 매우 초라한 수준이죠. 재생에너지 비중이 한 40%에 육박하는 EU나 30%를 넘어선 중국, 그리고 OECD 평균에 비해도 한참 모자랍니다. 이렇게 한국에서 재생에너지 보급이 느리게 된 그 더딘 이유는 안정되고 일관되고 적극적인 정책 시그널을 보내지 못한 정부의 일차적인 책임이 있다 하겠습니다. 그렇지만은 기술적인 측면에서 그 재생에너지 확산을 위해서 충분하게 기여를 하지 못한 한전의 책임도 간과할 수 없다고 생각합니다. 너무 빠른가요? 예, 간과할 수 없다고 생각합니다. 근데 반면에 인도네시아 같은 경우에는 발전량 기준으로 한국이 한 62% 정도 되는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 근데 전력 믹스에서 화석 연료가 차지하는 비중은 80%를 간 넘어선 걸로 알고 있는데요. 석탄 발전의 비중도 현재 자그마치 62%에 달하고 있습니다. 그래서 아까 그 앞서 그 MEMR과 투자청에서 MEMR에서 말씀해 주셨다시피 2060년도에 넷제로를 가기 위해 가지고 계속해서 석탄 발전을 줄여나가야 되는데 인도네시아 정부가 어떠한 정책을 펼치느냐에 따라 가지고 에너지 전환 속도는 한국보다도 훨씬 더 빠르게 또 더 효과적으로 더 효율적으로 진행될 수 있다고 생각합니다. 이런 상황을 고려할 때 한국 같은 경우는 지금 한국의 에너지 전환이 발등에 떨어진 불과 같은 상황인데요. 한전이 인도네시아의 녹색 경제로의 전환에 어떻게 기여할 수 있을지 솔직히 좀 의문시 됩니다. 그렇지만은 한전에서 그 지금까지 해외 사업을 어떻게 해왔는지를 좀 살펴봄으로 인해서 실질적인 협력 방안이 무엇인지를 좀 찾아볼까 생각하고 있습니다. 한전이 해외 사업에 진출하게 된 것은 간단합니다. 국내 사업에서 충분한 수익을 창출하지 못했기 때문입니다. 혹시 아실지 모르겠습니다만 1961년도에 한전이 설립됐는데 그때 한전이 소유하고 있는 발전 설비는 겨우 367메가와트였습니다. 발전량도 1.7테라와트 정도 됐었죠. 그런데 한전이 한국 경제 성장의 기관차 역할을 자임하게 되면서 지난 60년 동안 한국의 전력 산업은 무려 350배나 발전했습니다. 그리고 한전도 한 250배 가까이 발전했었죠. 실제 1990년대 이전까지만 하더라도 전력 수요의 증가율이 매년 11%가 넘어섰습니다. 이거는 1961년 이후에 한국의 명목 GDP 성장률이 16% 정도 되거든요. 그렇다면 한국 경제의 성장과 한전의 성장이 궤를 같이 했다고 볼 수 있겠죠. 그런데 이런 계속해서 10% 넘게 성장하던 그 수요가 늘어나던 이 전력 수요 증가율이 2000년대 들어와서 뚝 떨어지기 시작합니다. 2000년대 들어와서는 수요 증가율이 4%대로 떨어졌죠. 2010년대에는 더 떨어졌습니다. 2%까지 떨어졌어요. 그리고 2019년도와 2020년도에 가면 마이너스 성장까지 하게 됐습니다. 그러다 보니까 한국의 국내 전력 시장이 조만간에 포화 상태에 이르를 것이다 생각하게 됐고 더 이상 국내에서 성장 모멘텀을 찾을 수 없게 된 것입니다. 새로운 성장 모멘텀을 찾아서 무엇인가를 해야 되는 그런 상황이었죠. 마침 글로벌 전력 산업의 사업 환경이 크게 바뀌게 되었습니다. 지난 한 세기 동안 전력 산업을 지배해왔던 규제 시스템이 완화되면서 시장이 문을 열게 되었죠. 무슨 말씀이냐면은 자연 독점이나 투자비를 보존해주는 그런 규제 시스템을 경쟁 시스템이 대체하게 된 것입니다. 동시에 동서 냉전 체제가 붕괴되고 또 WTO 체제가 출범하면서 글로벌 시장 규모가 확대되었습니다. 이에 따라 가지고 선진적인 유틸리티들은 활동 모델이 세계로 넓혀나가게 되었고 이에 따라서 급성장을 하게 됐습니다. 이게 1980년대, 90년대, 2000년대에 들어서는 일이죠. 이때 신흥 경제권이 부상하게 되면서 신흥 경제권이 부상에 따라서 전력 수요도 급격하게 늘어나게 됩니다. 그래서 이 신흥 경제권들은 늘어나는 전력 수요를 충당하기 위해 가지고 해외 자본을 유치해야 되는데 이를 위해서 마침 non-recourse 방식의 프로젝트 파이낸싱하고 BOT 방식의 IPP 사업이 활성화되면서 그 수요를 충당하게 됩니다. 어떤 사업 방식의 비즈니스 모델들이 갖춰졌다는 것이죠. 한전도 1990년대 초반부터 인적 교류나 기술 교류를 시작을 해가지고 동남아의 개도국이 된 기술 지원을 시작했습니다. 그래서 1995년도에 필리핀에 650메가와트 규모의 중유발전소의 O&M 사업을 수주하고 이어서 1996년도에 역시 필리핀 일리안에서 1200메가와트 규모의 가스복합 발전소 IPP 사업을 수주하면서 본격적으로 해외 사업에 뛰어들게 됩니다. 현재 한전은 세계 24개국에서 한 46개 프로젝트를 좀 운영하고 있는데요. 지난 30년 동안 누적된 매출 규모가 한 36조 원 정도에 해당하고 누적 수익이 한 4조 원에 달합니다. 상당히 성장을 많이 했다고 볼 수 있지만은 한전의 연간 매출이 매년 60조 원을 넘어서는 걸 생각한다면 매우 미미한 수준이라 생각할 수 있겠죠. 한전그룹이 인도네시아에서 벌이고 있는 해외 사업을 말씀드린다면 한전이 100% 지분을 소유하고 있는 발전자회사까지 포함해서 한 8개 정도로 알고 있습니다. 한전의 발전자회사인 중부발전에서 찌레본 1, 2 그리고 탄중자티, 완푸 이런 5개 사업을 지금 진행하고 있고요. 한전에서는 2025년 4월 준공을 목표로 해가지고 자바 9&10 사업을 진행하고 있습니다. 광산개발 사업도 하고 있는데 2010년도에 바이안 리소스의 지분 20%를 인수했고요. 아다로사의 지분도 그보다 조금 일찍 앞서갔거나 아다로사의 지분도 일부 인수하기도 했습니다. 다른 프로젝트는 더 이상 언급하지 않더라도 한전이 직접 수행하고 있는 자바 9&10에 대해서는 시작 단계에서부터 우여곡절이 있었기 때문에 약간 설명이 필요로 할 거로 생각됩니다. 한국 법령상 총 사업비가 1,000억 원 이상이 되고 공기업의 투자비가 500억 원 이상인 그런 프로젝트에 대해서는 반드시 정부의 예비 타당성 조사라는 그런 절차를 거치게 되어 있습니다. 자바 9&10도 마찬가지로 예비 타당성 조사를 거쳤죠. 다른 프로젝트들하고 다르게 자바 9&10 두 차례를 거쳤는데 예비 타당성 조사를 이 두 차례 다 수익성 검사에서는 그 기준치 미달했습니다. 예비 타당성 조사가 공공성 30%, 수익성 70%로 구성되는데 수익성 기준에서 기준치를 충족시키지 못한 것이죠. 그럼에도 불구하고 2020년 6월 달에 한전 이사회가 자바 9&10 프로젝트를 승인하면서 현재 건설 중에 있고 공정률이 80%를 넘어선 걸로 알고 있습니다. 그 이외에도 성사되지는 않았지만 한전과 인도네시아 간에는 여러 가지 사업을 추진해 왔습니다. G2G 사업의 일환으로 추진했었던 보조네가라 가스복합 발전도 있었고요. 그다음 인도네시아의 저열량탄을 가스화하는 석탄 가스화 사업, 그다음에 컴프레스드 내추럴 가스 CNG 사업 같은 걸 추진했었는데 다 기술적인 문제나 어떤 수익성 문제로 중단했던 프로젝트들입니다. 자, 이런 것들을 감안할 때 한전이 인도네시아의 녹색 경제로의 전환을 위해서 어떠한 기여를 할 수 있을지 제 자신 좀 상당히 좀 의문시 되는 부분이 있는데요. 그래도 이런 것들을 한번 살펴보면 한전이 어떤 역할을 할 수 있는지 보려고 한다면 한전이 해외 사업 역할에 대해서 상당히 냉정하게 들여다볼 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 저 자신 개인적인 생각인데요. 저는 한전의 해외 사업이 래퍼의 역할에 좀 머물고 있는 게 아닌가 생각하고 있습니다. 무슨 말이냐면은 사업 관리 프로젝트의 관리 영역에 집중하고 있다는 것이죠. 어떤 계약이라든지 금융 또는 기술과 같은 주요 업무들은 대부분 위탁에 의해서 외부 전문가들을 활용하고 있습니다. 한전은 EPC 역량도 갖추고 있지 않고 있고요. O&M 역량도 갖고 있지 않습니다. 캡코 플리트라는 이름 아래에서 외부의 전문가들을 확보해서 캡코 플리트로 해외 사업을 추진하고 있는 것이죠. 파이낸싱 측면에서는 그나마 한전이 기여하는 부분이 있다고 생각할 수도 있습니다. 한전의 브랜드 가치도 있고 또 그 규모가 있기 때문에요. 그런데 한전은 아까 말씀드렸던 넌 리코스 방식의 프로젝트 파이낸싱을 고집합니다. 만약에 한전이 프로젝트를 진행하는 과정에서 발생할 수 있는 다양한 리스크들을 충분히 관리할 수 있다면 기업 내부 자금을 조달해서 함으로 인해 사업비 규모도 줄이고 수익률도 훨씬 더 높일 수 있을 텐데 한전 해외 사업에 있어서는 리스크 테이킹 싫어합니다. 그래서 프로젝트 파이낸싱 방식을 고집하고 있는데 그렇다 보니까 프로젝트의 실질적인 주인은 대주단들이 담당하고 있습니다. 대주단들이 총 사업비의 한 70 내지 80% 정도를 제공하고 있는데요. 대주단들은 대여금을 안전하게 회수하기 위해서 금융계약 속에 다양한 강제 장치들을 정교한 조치들을 강제해서 집어넣고 있습니다. 다시 말씀드린다면 대주단이 요구하는 여러 가지 조건들만 부합한다면 한국에서의 그 파이낸싱은 얼마든지 가능할 수 있다고 생각합니다. 한전이 해외에서 재생에너지 사업도 다양하게 좀 수행하고 있는데요. 재생에너지 사업에 대해서 한 가지 좀 덧붙이고자 합니다. 첫 번째로 재생에너지 사업은 석탄 화력이라든지 뭐 어떤 가스 화력 또는 원전 이런 것과 다르게 그런 전통적인 발전원과 다르게 규모가 대규모 자본력을 필요로 하지 않습니다. 상대적으로 파이낸싱이 수월하다는. 두 번째로 그 재생에너지 사업은 사업 지역 내에서의 그 노출되는 범위가 상당히 높습니다. 그래서 다양한 리스크, 해외 사업자들 같은 경우에 다양한 리스크를 접할 수가 있는데 바로 그 때문에 한전이 그 해외 송배전망 사업에 적극적으로 뛰어들지 않고 있기도 하거든요. 그래서 그런 그 재생에너지 사업의 리스크들을 충분히 또 인허가 절차들을 이제 추진하기 위해서 현지 개발자들의 역할이 매우 중요합니다. 그래서 훌륭한 현지 개발자들과 협업하는 것이 매우 중요하다 생각을 하고요. 세 번째로 기술적인 측면에 있어서 재생에너지 기술적인 측면에 있어서 어떤 그 석탄 화력이나 같은 전통적인 발전원에 비해서 훨씬 더 제약이 덜합니다. 언제든 그 얘기는 무슨 말씀이냐면은 기자재나 시공 능력이나 또는 운영 역량을 현지에서 조달하기 상대적으로 수월하다는 뜻입니다. 여기까지 말씀드리고 나서 그렇다면 인도네시아의 녹색 경제로의 전환을 위해서 무엇이 필요할까 하는 것들 제 나름대로 생각을 좀 정리를 해봤는데요. 한 두 가지 정도라 생각됩니다. 두 가지. 첫 번째는 해외 사업자들이 인도네시아에서 재생에너지 사업을 추진하는 데서 마음 놓고 마음 편히 진행할 수 있도록 인도네시아 정부의 정책적인 차원의 세이프가드가 필요하다 생각됩니다. 이거 이제 인도네시아 정부 나름대로 그 다양한 그 해외 자본을 유치하기 위한 어떤 정책적인 그 조치를 취하고 있을 거라 생각됩니다만 일단 한국을 생각한다면 한국의 잠재적인 투자자들이 인도네시아의 투자에 대해서 어떤 생각을 갖고 있는지를 충분히 그 수렴을 해가지고 모아가지고 그거를 그 정책적으로 반영할 수 있도록 하는 게 필요하지 않을까라는 생각이 좀 들고요. 두 번째로는 재생에너지 사업을 인도네시아의 G2G, 거버먼트 투 거버먼트 경제협력 차원의 아젠다로 격상시킬 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 그래서 한국의 유틸리티들하고 인도네시아 현지의 개발 사업자들 그리고 인도네시아 공기업들이 PPP 프로젝트로 해가지고 패스트 트랙을 추진하게 된다면 훨씬 더 탄력을 받을 수 있지 않을까 생각합니다. 한국의 여기 KX임이나 아까 발표했던 무역보험공사 같은 한국의 ECA들이나 금융기관의 그 지원 같은 파이낸싱 같은 경우는 한국의 기업이 한국의 컨텐츠를 가지고 인도네시아에 진출할 경우에 조건만 부합한다면 얼마든지 금융 지원도 가능할 것으로 생각하고 있습니다. 이상으로 발표를 마치겠습니다.
Thank you, Mr. Jong-Ho, for the profound history and insights on KEPCO's role and also public financiers' role in expanding renewables and expanding cooperation between South Korea and Japan. And also, Mr. Jong pointed out that it's important for Indonesian government to make a regulatory breakthrough on the renewable expansion projects. I know we're kind of lagging behind, but I'd like to ask some questions to Mr. Jong for briefly. As a former high-level executive of KEPCO, I wanted to ask you that how do you find possibilities of low-carbon transition of Indonesian coal plants, which you just mentioned under operation and construction that KEPCO have already invested? And so, yeah, it would be appreciated if you could share your insights on that.
그 저탄소 경제로 이행은 저는 100% 가능할 것으로 생각됩니다. 첫 번째는 뭐 현재 확인할 수는 없지만은 기술 발전에 의해 가지고 다양한 가능성들이 다양한 옵션들이 많이 들어오고 있거든요. 이거는 미래의 잠재적인 가능성을 열어둔다 생각되고요. 그런데 미래의 확인되지 않은 기술적인 가능성을 염두에 두고 현재 우리가 지금 할 수 있는 것들을 제쳐두는 것은 말이 안 된다는 겁니다. 현재 우리가 할 수 있는 만큼 해야만이 기술 발달에 따른 미래의 가능성들도 현실화될 수 있을 것이기 때문에 무슨 말씀이냐면은 저는 그 한국 같은 경우에도 지금 뭐 2050년까지 석탄 발전을 중단한다 이런 얘기를 생각을 하고 있고 아까 그 인도네시아에서도 2060년도까지 석탄 발전을 중단하겠다. 그리고 아까 그 표를 봤더니 2045년도부터 이후에도 그 석탄 발전 IPP 사업이 계속해서 유지되고 있는 거로 이제 그 확인했었는데요. 저는 한국 같은 경우에 석탄 발전을 중단하겠다는 거를 당장 선언하고 그 시기를 좀 앞당길 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 동시에 그를 대체할 수 있는 재생에너지 프로젝트를 얼마만큼 할 수 있겠다는 거를 얼마만큼 하겠다는 거를 정책적으로 발표하고 그 다양한 제도적인 지원을 해야 될 것이고 또한 한전 같은 경우는 그 재생에너지를 수용할 수 있는 다양한 그 개통 연계 문제 이런 것들을 그 실험도 하고 또 설치도 하고 이렇게 하면 가능하지 않을까 생각합니다. 저 개인적으로는 아까 그 사회자님 말씀하셨던 저탄소 경제와 관련해서 100% 실현 가능하다 생각합니다.
Thank you. We'll move on to our last presenter. Last but not least, we have Mr. Yunan Fajar Arianto from PT Indonesia Battery Corporation. He's the Senior Vice President of Finance and Portfolio Management Department of Indonesia Battery Corporation. And he'll be presenting on investment opportunities and challenges facing the Indonesian battery industry. Yeah, Mr. Yunan Fajar Arianto, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, panelists and participants of this webinar. My presentation today is about one of the most important parts of energy transition, namely battery. Battery, of course, as you all know, powering our electric vehicles and also provides energy storage for our intermittent renewable power sources such as solar and wind. I will try to present investment opportunities and challenges for the development of battery industry in Indonesia and how South Korea and Indonesia have promising opportunities for mutually beneficial partnership in this sector. Can we have the slide, please? Okay, and full screen, please. Yeah, thank you. The importance of battery in the energy transition can be clearly seen in this battery demand projection in next slide. As you can see, we are witnessing an incredible increase of battery demand to support energy transition in the next 10 to 15 years. Last year's demand under 800 gigawatt hour is projected to increase more than 7 times in 2035, reaching 5.7 terawatt hour. If you look at the composition of this demand, it is quite consistent that the largest portion of the demand is for commercial and passenger EV. Now, South Korean companies play a major role in fulfilling this battery demand. As you can see in the next slide, 3 South Korean companies are among the top 10 battery producers. So LG Energy Solution, SK On and Samsung SDI produced 26% of global battery production in 2022. So clearly, South Korean companies have the battery technology and manufacturing capability that many companies from other countries, such as Indonesia, currently do not have. So last year, the global battery manufacturing capacity is around 893 gigawatt hour. In that year, Indonesia's battery manufacturing capacity is close to 0 gigawatt hour. So we have a lot of homework to do in order to catch up, to increase the production capacity in Indonesia. Hopefully, this will change next year with the completion of 10 gigawatt hour battery factory in Karawang, West Java. Now, this factory is developed by a consortium of LG Energy Solution and Hyundai. So as you can see, a real contribution of investment from South Korean companies such as LG Energy Solution and Hyundai is very, very important for the development of battery industry in Indonesia. Next slide. Previously, thank you. So battery demand in Indonesia, previous slide, please. So battery demand in Indonesia is also projected to experience significant growth. This is a bit conservative compared to what Pak Gigi mentioned before. In this projection from Boston Consulting Group, we see that the demand will increase from around 6 gigawatt hour in 2035 to reaching 59 gigawatt hour in 2035. So similar with the global demand, most of the demand will be for electric vehicles. So we have 2 wheels, 4 wheels, and also commercial vehicles. Battery energy storage system, BASS demand is also there. And BCG believes that there is opportunity for Indonesia to also supply battery demand for other countries in Southeast Asia. So we can actually become an exporter of battery for other countries in Southeast Asia. But in order to fulfill all this demand, both Indonesia and export, of course, it is important to speed up the development of battery industry in Indonesia. So partnership with key South Korean companies, I think that already have extensive experience in this industry, I think is one of the opportunity that Indonesia should take to really speed up the battery industry development in Indonesia. So what can Indonesia offer to this potential partnership with our South Korean partners? In the next slide, we see that the two dominant technology of the battery is the LFP, the lithium ferrophosphate, and the nickel-based battery. So around 50% the projection will be divided between LFP and the nickel-based battery. Indonesia's, of course, the focus will be on the nickel-based battery. As mentioned before by both Pak Gigi and Pak Cahyo, in the next slide, we see that actually Indonesia have the largest reserves of nickel in the world. So that is very, very important because the nickel itself is consisted of up to 80% of the material of the batteries, and in terms of cost, it's about 20 up to 21% of the overall cost of the battery. So it's very, very beneficial for Indonesia to really capture this exciting opportunities to supply the world battery demand with Indonesian nickel. In terms of the capacity of our refinery, for example, we can supply the global nickel sulfate net that will be used for battery production. So this is what we can offer as Indonesia. We have the necessary materials. One of the most key important part of the material of the battery. We have a lot of that. Next slide, we see that other than that, we also, of course, have one of the biggest economies in the world. We have a lot of mineral resources, nickel, as I mentioned before. We have also copper, aluminum, all very important ingredients of battery. In terms of demand, we also one of the largest market for automotive. So 2 wheels, 4 wheels, and also electric vehicles increasingly important in Indonesia because 35% of the cost of EV is actually in battery. So if we can make the battery itself domestically here in Indonesia, it really going to support our competitive advantage in terms of production of electric vehicle in Indonesia. So this is why it is important for us to really speed up the development of battery industry in Indonesia. So the government, in the next slide, in 2021, established my company, Indonesia Battery Corporation, to become an extension of government's initiative in developing both the battery and also the electric vehicle ecosystem in Indonesia. We have 4 shareholders. Antam is the mining company. They have the nickel reserve that we need to produce a battery. Inalum is an aluminum smelter company, so they have the aluminum that we will need for production of the battery. Pertamina and PLN, of course, big Indonesian companies. PLN, of course, our state electricity company. They all have some very powerful support for us to really enable us to speed up the development of battery industry in Indonesia. What we do in the next slide is we do it in both 2 sides. First, we will build end-to-end battery industries. So all the way from the upstream for nickel mining, this will be done by our shareholders Antam. And then we will build in the blue part nickel refining facilities, both pyro and hydro, to produce the materials needed for the construction of battery materials for the cathode of the nickel-based battery. We will also have factories to produce battery cell and module, and also, again, after a certain period of time, we will have battery recycling facilities to recycle the battery. In the bottom part, in addition to the battery manufacturing ecosystem, we also will build the EV, electric vehicle, and ESS, energy storage system ecosystem in Indonesia, both for the vehicle itself, the battery, and also but infrastructure such as charging and swapping. This is all we are planning to do in the coming years. In the next slide, I will show you the scope of our battery, the nickel to battery projects. We already have 2 framework agreements with partners. One is LG Energy Solution, number 2 producer of battery in the world. And another partner that we already signed a framework agreement with is CATL. CATL is the number 1 battery producer in the world. So in both LG Energy Solution and CATL, we will build a nickel extraction and refining plant, a cathode plant, a battery factory plant, and also a battery recycling plant. This has been progressing quite well. For example, with CATL, I think we are in the middle of completing the feasibility study and also the completion of joint venture agreement with CATL, in the hope that we can start the construction of these facilities as early as early next year, with the hope we can complete this battery factory in 2026. In the first half of 2026, we already have production coming. With LG Energy Solution, of course, they already have a head start. Next year, they will complete their 10 gigawatt-hour battery cell in Karawang, but they will also want to expand that 10 gigawatt-hour with this similar facility with us to add another, I think, around 20 gigawatt-hour more in addition to the 10 gigawatt-hour that they already constructed in Karawang with Hyundai. So all this, hopefully, we can be beneficial to the development to really speed up the development of industry, battery industry in Indonesia. Of course, other players such as private companies are also very interested in this, and we see that several private companies also have their own projects in development of battery industry in Indonesia, which we very much welcome. They are not competitors. We are both, I think we are all very want to contribute more to Indonesia development of battery, you know, in order to support the transition of energy in Indonesia. In the next slide, I will show you that there are several challenges. Some of them is quite a big challenges in order for the projects that I mentioned before can happen. One is manpower. We currently, as mentioned before, we have 0 gigawatt hour of manufacturing capacity. We will have to really make sure that we have enough human resources to really do this project and operate this project in the future. This is something that is quite crucial for us. The other one is the clean energy needed for this the facility, because this facility, or most of the buyers, especially from Europe and America, would like to have the project powered by green energy. So we predicted it is around 2 gigawatt of additional clean energy that need to be there for all these projects to run on green energy. And this is something that is quite challenging for us. Maybe so a company like KEPCO, of course, will be interested in developing all this with PLN, our electric power company. I know there are several issues about overseas project in KEPCO, but I think this is a good opportunity to explore whether or not there is some very real cooperation that can happen in this sector. In terms of investment, this is something that is very, very important. Also, this takes a lot of money. We estimated around $15 billion. So a support for finance companies such as K-Sure, I think will be very, very beneficial for us, especially if in our partnership with LG Energy Solution, for example, or other Korean companies. So we are very, very keen to have the support of financial companies such as K-Sure from South Korea to finance this project. Of course, the technology will be coming from our South Korean partners and Chinese partners, and also other than LG Energy Solution, we welcome any opportunities for technology partnership with other South Korean companies. In the EV, we have to make sure the development of infrastructure behind the EV infrastructure. So in the next slide, I will show you our roadmap. We are planning to have this all project finished by 2026. We will have in 2024 the completion of LG Energy Solution battery factory in Karawang. So that will happen in 2024. But 2026, hopefully, local cell manufacturing expansion already reach a sufficient demand, to really fulfill the Indonesia domestic demand for the battery. Hopefully, by 2030, we also will have our own battery technology to support further demand of Indonesia. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yunan Fajar, Arianto, for the presentation. Before I give my mic to the host, I also have a really brief question to you. As I saw, it was quite impressive to see that your company and your Indonesian government is also planning to export battery to other countries in 2035. So regarding that, I wondered, other than domestic battery demand in Indonesia, how Indonesian government is planning or preparing to export the battery toward adjacent countries by 2055. So which countries are candidate for the export for your country?
Thank you, Mr. Dr. But we know that manufacturing hub of automotive in Southeast Asia is Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia. So naturally, those three countries is the one that's most potential to become an export market for Indonesian battery. But again, this is of course depending on how fast we can develop Indonesian battery manufacturing capacity. Because I think the priority will be for domestic demand first. And then after that, if enough excess capacity is there for export, then we will export to those countries. But again, really depending on how fast we can really increase the capacity currently around 0 to really fulfill both the domestic demand and Southeast Asia demand.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you for the presentations for all of the panelists. As we conclude this engaging panel discussion, I would like to extend my gratitude to our panelists for their illuminating presentations and for being an integral part of this meaningful exchange and the webinar. Now, as we approach the end of the session, I will hand the microphone back to our host so that they will guide us through the closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Dong Jae for moderating a very insightful and, as you said, a meaningful exchange between the experts and panelists about the potentials of cooperations in project financing in renewable energy and battery between Indonesia and Korea. So as we are now nearing the end of this event, I would like to invite Mr. Joo-jin Kim, the Managing Director for Solutions of Our Climate, to deliver the closing remarks for this event. So the floor is yours, Mr. Joo-jin.
Thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Joo-jin Kim. I am the CEO of Solutions for Our Climate. It's a great honor to be the last contributor at today's Golden Jubilee session. And I thank the organizers for preparing today's session. Above all, I thank Ambassador Kim, Director Atmo, Senior Director Park, Director Purnomo, Senior Advisor Chung, and Senior Vice President Arianto for spending their time to share their insight and experience today. As obviously discussed today, there is a strong potential for Korean and Indonesian collaboration to build Paris Agreement compatible greener economy. And the potential of Korean investment to Indonesia will be important given the deep economic ties between the two countries. Having said that, I'd like to recall a discussion I had, and something I think something was mentioned a couple of times in today's discussion as well. Is that I like to recall a discussion I had with a friend working at Korea Development Bank. This was before COVID, but before COVID. According to my friend, the bank is very much interested in investing in renewable energy or green energy in Indonesia, especially solar and wind. However, the reality is that while there have been a very good pricing package or financial package for the past coal power, not less now, probably not that good as it now, but always the pricing or the investment environment for the policies associated with renewable development was very unpredictable and made their investments not that easy in Indonesia or other Southeast Asian nations. And I think this is something that that should be thought of. There's also in this difficulty investing in renewable energies. It's not just something that happens in Southeast Asia, but also above all in Korea. Korea also has a very low renewable penetration ratio. And I think, in summary, we are not developing and making policies for renewable energy development as much as we had been interested in building steel factories or petrochemical factories, which would benefit from a lot from expedited permitting, more predictable siting and planning, and attractive pricing schemes for the power sector. Will be attractive power purchase agreement schemes or relevant subsidy schemes. I think that kind of, not just the investment coming in from one country to another, but also there's a lot of policy work that has to be done from both sides to vitalize clean energy investments, including battery ESS investments in both countries. I hope today's discussion contributes to that direction. Once again, thank you very much to the organizers for organizing today's discussion, and it was a great pleasure and honor to share the space with esteemed speakers from both countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jujin Kim, for your concluding remarks. And now that marks the end of our event for today, I hope all the participants can gain more insights about the potential of cooperations between Indonesia and Korea. Also, using this momentum of the 50th anniversary of the 50th diplomatic relations between the Republic of Indonesia and the Republic of Korea to build a closer friendship and stronger partnership for sustainable energy transition in the future. So on behalf of the conveners of this event, thank you once again to all the participants, esteemed panelists, and goodbye and see you on the next event. Thank you.